So tonight we're talking about Egypt, the return, and this is a trip from December 21st through January 3rd. And these are just a few of the highlights for the trip. Now, I'm not only going to be speaking about the trip itself, I'm also going to be talking about the spiritual work that we're going to be doing. You know, we really view these trips as pilgrimages. And I'm going to be talking about some of the spiritual principles that are underlying the work that we do in Egypt in particular. Egypt, as I'm sure you probably know, is an incredibly powerful place, and it's really in many ways the source for almost all of our Western spirituality. So we're really lucky. We get to do some incredible things, like we get a private visit to the Great Pyramid. We'll be doing that on New Year's Day. And this is, actually the thing that I'm probably the most excited about with this trip is the ability to go in at this pivotal point in the yearly cycle, in the solar cycle, and very clearly set and anchor our intentions for the upcoming year, not only for ourselves personally, but for the planet, for our families, for our entire community. We'll go down and we'll stand between the paws of the Sphinx, something that's not, normally allowed to visitors to Egypt. We're going to be sailing the Nile aboard a five-star private cruise ship that's called the Afandina, and this is a dahabeah. I'll be talking about that here in just a bit. We'll be going and visiting Saqqara and several of the places in the Delta. And then, of course, we'll be visiting all of the sacred sites to the south in Luxor and Thebes. So we'll be going to the Valley of the Kings, to Karnak, including a private visit to the Sekhmet Chapel, which some of you have probably heard about. We'll be going to the Temple of Kamambo, the Temple of Horus at Edfu, the Temple of Isis at Philae. There are lots of things that aren't on this list, and we'll also be having a very special New Year's Eve celebration and dinner. And I've been to Egypt before during this period, and it's a really special place for spending this special time of the year. So let's start by the first thing that I want to share with you is the fact that the ancient Egyptian temples were built to mirror the form of the human body. And because the Egyptians believed that the body was the container of the spirit, and they built their temples to be containers of the spirit. And as we progress up the Nile, the temples along the Nile correspond to, you'll notice the chakra column, the symbols of the chakra column. I'm sure that all of you or most of you recognize the chakras. As you move up the Nile and as we traverse the temples, we are also moving up the subtle energy body and moving through the chakras. Now, the ancient Egyptians never thought or expressed themselves in terms of chakras. So each of the temples along the Nile is dedicated to one of the ancient Egyptian gods or goddesses, what were referred to as the netters. And these gods and goddesses, these primal psychic and cosmic and spiritual energies, correspond to the chakras and their place not only in the subtle body, but in the overall ascension process that each of us as an individual goes through. So, the root chakra corresponds to unity, creation, the life force, to magic. That's the mystery of creation. That's the temple of Isis at Philae. And then we come up to the sacral chakra, which is duality, sex, polarity. That's the temple of Kamambo, which is dedicated to two gods. And I'll be walking you through each of these temples here in just a minute. Then we come to the solar plexus, which is where we find mastery over those lower forces within ourselves, where we exert our will, not only over ourselves, but in the world, into creation. And that's the temple of Horus at Edfu. And Horus is a solar deity, and so there's no accident that it corresponds to the solar plexus. And then once we've mastered those lower frequencies and those lower vibrations in ourselves and in our experience and in the world, then we're able to move up into the higher realms of love and compassion. This is the heart center. And there are multiple temples and multiple sites in Egypt that correspond to this vibration. In just the same way, in English, we've got really one word for love. Love. In the Greek, for instance, it was known as eros, as agape, as philios. So you have the love between a man and a woman. You have the love for all of humanity. You have brotherly love, these kinds of things. And we actually have multiple heart chakras, and there are multiple temples and sites that correspond to the love expression um, in Egypt. Then we move up to the throat, which is self-expression, and that corresponds to the temple of Seti I at Abydos, which is a really, really powerful place, and where I had my own personal spiritual awakening, all centered around the sacred geometry of the flower of life. Then we move up to the third eye, the Ajna chakra, which is clarity, truth, the capacity to see beyond illusion, and that is Sakara. And then finally, we move to the crown chakra, which is transcendence, ascension. And that is, of course, the Giza Plateau and the Great Pyramid. So, first of all, let's dip back down into the 3D world. We're going to be staying at the Mina House. If any of you are familiar with Egypt, or if you've ever been there, you know that the Mina House is quite a fabled place. It's so beautiful and so magical, and like almost literally within the shadows of the pyramids. So it is right across from the Giza Plateau. It was built as a hunting lodge by the last king of Egypt, the Khedive Ismail, and it's functioned as a hotel for rather a long time now. I think probably 100 years, perhaps longer. And it's so incredible to be sitting in the dining room or sitting on the balcony or by the poolside and to see the pyramids there so powerfully, not only in your field of vision, but for you to be in their energy field. It's really quite incredible. They're like mountains in the sky, and so they're this profound psychic presence the entire time that you're staying at the Mina House. And so there we go. And so then let's talk about the Nile itself. The Nile is one of the primal sources of spirituality. It is an incredibly powerful geomantic thing, a geomantic feature on the surface of the earth. And when we're sailing the Nile, we're going to be doing it, and we'll spend most of our time on the Nile aboard the Afandina, which is a private, what's called a dahabeya. So really, there are three classes of boats on the Nile. You have the little ones, which are the feluccas, and then you have the really big cruise ships, which will hold several hundred passengers. And I've done that many times, and it can be a very beautiful experience. They're quite luxurious, but the Afandina is really special. It's sort of like our own little floating B&B. And one of the things that this allows us to do is it allows us to set our own schedule. All of the big boats really sail on a fixed schedule, and you're just amongst the crowds when you're sailing on one of the big boats. When we're on the Afandina, we go where we want, when we want. It's a very intimate experience. It's perfect for our group because all of the spiritual work that we're doing, the community, the spiritual community that we are all, drawn together to create and grow and further, it has the perfect home inside of this little cocoon, this beautiful little cocoon that we'll be, floating down the Nile upon. And, the banks of the Nile, again, it's just such a powerful place. And when you look out from the boat as we're sailing, you look back and really you're looking, into the past. We oftentimes will see people living the way that they have for centuries, probably even thousands of years. And the landscape itself is so incredibly beautiful. And the weather at that time of year is really gorgeous, especially if you live in a colder clime. Now, one of the nice things about the Afandina, so here we are. This is one of the meals out on the deck. It only holds 14 of us, so it's going to be really really intimate. We have a private chef, and really truly it's family style traveling. This is something that we did a few trips ago. We just decided, hey, let's have a picnic today. So we pulled up on the banks of a small island, actually in the Nile, and set up a picnic and ate out under the beautiful clear sky. We'll go swimming in the Nile. We'll stop and go into little villages. I've been into a village before where the kids in the village, we were the first Westerners that they had seen. We've gone into villages and just stumbled upon wedding celebrations where suddenly we're the unexpected guests of honor. So these are just a few of the perks of traveling aboard this beautiful vessel. And then the sunset on the Nile from the decks of the Afandina is always truly, truly something to behold. Now, this is a shot of the Temple of Isis at Philae, and I see we have several people that have called in. So I apologize for referring so heavily to the visuals. I'll do my best to keep you all in mind, those of you that are on the phone. And also, by the way, I'm going to keep the call right to about 30 minutes, and we'll have a few questions and answers right at the end. So remember, when we were talking about the correspondences with the chakras, the Temple of Isis is the one that corresponds to the root chakra. And Isis, of course, is the goddess of magic. And the Temple of Isis at Philae is built on an island in the middle of a lake, of Lake Nasser. And we will be going privately to the Temple of Isis at dawn. And this is really an incredible place to set intentions, because it really truly is like coming out of a womb when you come out of this darkened temple, the seat of magic, and greet the rising sun. It's such a gorgeous place. It really is. And then from there, we move up to the sacral chakra. And so the Temple of Isis is really all about the unity from which everything is initially born. That's the 0 point. That's the great mystery. That's the cosmic divine truth. That is that which has not yet come into form. But as soon as we come into form, we experience creation inherently in a dualistic way. We see polarity. We see the world of objects. We're born into the world of illusion. And that's what the temple at Kamambo symbolizes and embodies. So this temple, it's the only temple in all of Egypt that is dedicated to two gods. It has two entrances, you can see here from the front. And one of them is the crocodile god, which is Sobek. And the other one is Horus, the hawk god. And so just the symbolism of those two deities, a crocodile and a hawk, you can see there we have the interplay of light and dark, polarity, duality, sort of the struggle, if you will. That's oftentimes exhibited, we think of the sacral chakra sometimes as the sex chakra. So there is the polarity of male and female that's at play here. And then as we ascend further through our levels of spiritual mastery, we come to the Temple of Horus at Edfu. And again, this corresponds to the solar chakra. And of course, what better way to symbolize the mastery of the self in the solar realms and the mastery of the self over the lower aspects of existence than through the hawk, than through Horus. And the passion of Isis and Osiris and the battle between Horus and Set is something that we spend a lot of time exploring as a sort of archetypal structure for our own psychic and spiritual transformation. In the interest of time, I'm not really going to dig down into that too much on this call. But one of the fascinating things to me about this site is that every year, just in the same way that the swallows always return to Capistrano in Southern California, the hawks return to this site, to this temple, where they lay their eggs. And hundreds of young hawks are born from here. So it's also not an accident that Horus is worshipped here. And I just love that shot. He's so fierce, symbolizing the need for us to be ruthless in our spiritual discipline. And this is the temple of Hatshepsut, one of the most beautiful sites in all of Egypt. It's also known as Deir el-Bahari. And so now, as we have moved past those lower three chakras, moved past the temple of Horus at Edfu, and begun to achieve some level of mastery and self-mastery, now we move up into the higher realms of the heart. And the architecture here at Hatshepsut at the Deir el-Bahari is so stunning. It's really, really gorgeous. There's a side chapel at that site dedicated to the goddess Hathor, the goddess of love, joy, and music. And we will be going and visiting Luxor Temple again, embodying all of the heart chakra energy. We like to go to Luxor at night. And Luxor is typically referred to as the Temple of Man. And Schwaller de Lubitz really did a tremendous amount of work there, understanding that temple and understanding the symbolic modes of expression that the Egyptians engaged in, and helping to decipher that. This is fascinating. One of the things that you'll see at Luxor Temple is that there is a mosque, about 1,000-year-old mosque, maybe just slightly less, 900 years, something like that. That when you walk through the temple, you see this mosque almost floating up in the air, because the entrance to the mosque is about 15 feet off the ground. When the mosque was built, the temple, which is, of course, thousands and thousands of years old, was almost completely buried. And so the mosque was built at what was then the ground level. And so, maybe 100 years ago, maybe not even that, excavation and renovation was done on the temple, and all of the sediment was cleared away to reveal the actual ground level of the temple itself. And so the mosque kind of floats up in the air. Then we move to the Temple of Karnak. And again, when we talk about the heart center, Karnak is such a powerful place. And one of the things that we do at the Temple of Karnak, somebody just sent me a message saying that it sounded staticky. So if it's been static, I'm going to unplug my headset. Hopefully this is some clear sound for you all now. One of the things that we do at the Temple of Karnak is we greet the rising sun. This temple is built with a really profound solar alignment to it, so that on the day of the equinox, the temple literally seems to give birth to the rising sun. And it's quite an amazing thing to see and to experience. So we'll be going into the Temple of Karnak and watch as the temple literally comes to life and gives birth to the rising sun on this pivotal, critical day. And one of the things that we always do when we go to the Temple of Karnak is we go and we visit the Chapel of Sekhmet. We have a private visit to the Chapel of Sekhmet. And this is as far as I know, as far as anybody else that I have ever worked with knows, it is the only piece of statuary, the only whole statue that is still on its original place in the earth, within its original structure in all of Egypt. And you know that these statues were activated by the priests. So they're, I'm going to put quotes around this now, they're alive. And the spiritual power in this place, when you go in and encounter this Sekhmet statue, is really quite phenomenal. I like to characterize it as a spiritual blowtorch, being in the presence of the statue in this little chapel. And then we move on to the Temple of Hathor. Hathor, of course, again, the goddess of love and joy and music. She's the wife of Horus. Her name literally means the house of Horus, Hathor. And this temple has been significantly restored. So the colors in this place are incredible. And each of these temples really has such a palpable, distinct energy to it. And when you go into the temple dedicated to the goddess of love, joy, and music, you feel this, so strongly. And this is also where we start to get into some of the weirder, more mysterious aspects of ancient Egypt. There are a number of crypts at the Temple of Dendra, the Temple of Hathor at Dendra. And there's one in particular that's underground that we will be going to, where you will see some very, very strange things. This is typically referred to as the Dendera light bulb. And I have spent many, many long hours contemplating and meditating on these symbols and what they mean. And I think this is a pointer to some ancient wisdom that is really currently lost to us. But when you're there and when you're able to see it, first of all, it's all Indiana Jones. We're going to be climbing down into these little crypts and backshishing the guards to be able to get down there. But when you're really confronted with this imagery, like up close and personal, it's pretty mind blowing. It's quite fascinating. And then we move on to the Temple of Seti I at Abydos. And, as I shared with you, this was where I had my own personal spiritual awakening some years ago, all around the flower of life and sacred geometry. And I've written fairly extensively about that, so you can find that on my blog, and I'll send some links out to everybody to share with you. So there are several things that are really evocative and noteworthy about the Temple of Seti. It has some of the finest religious art on the planet, some of the finest bas-relief carvings on the planet. It is also, as I was saying earlier, where the flower of life is found and where there's a very mysterious structure called the Osirian. This is where the helicopter and the tank and the spaceship and the airplane are found carved into the hieroglyphs way up high in the lintel, if any of you are familiar with that particular phenomenon. And then the Osirian, which is really one of the great mysteries on the planet, because it is such an anomaly in so many ways. And again, in particular, when you're there, you just know, you just feel in your cells, in your heart, that you are in the presence of something that is incredibly ancient and incredibly powerful and incredibly mysterious. The Osirian is most of the time covered in water. I have had the good fortune of being there one time when there wasn't water down inside of the Osirian. But that, of course, is where you see the symbolism of the flower of life carved into a couple of the pillars. And then we move on. This is a shot, and my apologies to those of you on the phone. This is a shot of one of the temples where you can see how much it looks like a person, like a big Lego person. You can see how much it really is shaped like a human being. We'll go and visit the Colossi of Memnon, some of these kind of fabled sites. We'll go into the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Several of the tombs we'll go and visit. And then we move up to Saqqara, which corresponds to the third eye. And this is where we find the step pyramid of Zoser, which is one of the oldest stone, it's actually the oldest stone structure on the planet. And it's really fascinating to me, the prime symbol that's associated with this site is the rearing cobra. And if you think about the way that the pharaohs were always shown, with the cobra right over their third eye, and if you think about the caduceus, or the way that the kundalini is shown as a snake, I think it makes perfect sense symbolically, intuitively, that Saqqara corresponds to the third eye. It corresponds to the awakened spiritual vision of the initiate. And even the step pyramid of Zoser, it looks very much like the pineal gland. Now, of course, archaeologists and Egyptologists will explain this in a very mundane way, having to do with the construction techniques, etc. But in my experience, the ancient Egyptians really did nothing by accident, and they worked at a deep and profound level of symbolic meaning. So I think that the symbolism that's found in Saqqara, from little things like relief carvings all the way up to the structure of the pyramid itself, are in no way accidental. And then finally, we move to the Giza Plateau, the Sphinx, and the Great Pyramid. And this is, the capstone of our journey, if you will. We will go and we will stand between the paws of the Sphinx, which is, wow, to be able to do that is such a privilege and such a blessing. It's just something that the vast majority of people will never be able to do. And then in particular to go into the Great Pyramid, the mystery of mysteries, the ultimate ascension and transformation machine. Have 2 hours of private time to ourselves on New Year's Day to be able to go into all of the chambers of the Great Pyramid, in particular the what's referred to as the King's Chamber. We'll be able to lie in the coffer there, to perform ceremony, to tone, to meditate. And I can't think of a more powerful or appealing way to be able to usher in the new year and to set intentions for myself, for my community, and for the world on that pivotal date. So this is a really special trip. All of our trips to Egypt are special, to be quite honest, but in particular, to be able to go at this time of year is just a treat. As I said, I've been there before. There's something about this time of year. We know at a really deep cellular level what's happening in the great cycle of the cosmos, which is one of the reasons why we celebrate it in the way that we do. But for instance, to be at the Temple of Karnak at the day when the sun is reborn, when we are reassured that the cycle is going to continue, that we're at kind of the lowest ebb and things are now on the upward spiral is beginning, and to be confronted with this artifact that is so staggering, billions of tons of stone, across acres, that's built in such a perfect alignment with the sun, and to be able to be there and witness that, just as one example. And so there's this fascinating correspondence that happens between our awareness of, the change of the seasons, just in terms of the solar and lunar calendars, but more importantly, our connection to the great cosmic cycle of life. And as we are traversing the sacred landscape of ancient Egypt and focusing on the internal transformation of our own spiritual ascension process and that self-mastery, and the way that all of these things come together in these sites, it's really a treat. And I'm excited